kind of an experiment. I wanted to see how long I could leave the logs on the ground or cut down before the bark started drying on there. Because as you know, or you've seen in past videos, when it's fresh, the tree just comes down, especially in the spring when the sap's running. That bark just peels off like nothing. Take it off in big sheets even. But now that these have been sitting here for a couple of weeks, I want to see if it still slips off like that. And actually, pretty good by the looks of it. Yeah, that's much better than if it was dry. Like if I cut this down in the winter and the bark's just holding tight to the wood. Alright, good to know. So I think what I'll do is I'll cut down the rest of the trees I need for these next two cabins. And then I can spend the next few weeks peeling them. This has been at least 3 weeks, I think. Another thing is bugs get a little bit less intense as the season goes on. It's a little less dangerous to leave them like this compared to like June, for example, when the bugs are most active. This one's drying on here, so that's not as good. It's coming off in little pieces instead of full sheets. Thinner bark though on this red spruce, that's probably why. So you can see the bark here is coming off not as well as it was 3 weeks ago when I first cut these logs down. Back then, I could just take a strip and peel it right off, right down to the clean inner, into the log section, sapwood, but underneath the cambium layer. So what that did is had a nice clean surface, but it was full of moisture and sugars. And what happens is it actually goes moldy. So you can see in the pile of logs over here, all those logs have a thin layer of mold on the outside, so they have to be washed. These logs that have been cut down for a while are starting to dry out, especially these thin red spruce bark trees. And what that's doing is creating this light dark pattern, which you'll see in most of the logs on the cabin. If you go back to the videos where I was building this cabin, I was actually pulling logs out of the woods as I was building. So what I had done is cut them down throughout the previous year in the winter, but I just let them lay where they fell. And I brought them in as I had room and as I needed them, and started debarking them after they had sat for a while. All that bark was starting to loosen up, but bugs started getting into them, and the bark would come off easier after that amount of time, but you did get that little bit of bug damage, and it took longer for them to dry, so they were heavier than they should have been. These ones here that I've stripped are drying a lot faster because the bark's not holding in that moisture, so they're going to be quite a bit drier than when I start building than this cabin was. The light dark pattern I kind of like. It was intentional on that cabin. The reason I do that charring on the boards, you can see in the soffit here, got a dark light pattern on the boards. So I just torched them, and it was not for preservation in that case. That wood there is never going to see moisture, never see direct rain at least, or snow, but it just makes them blend in better. So inside the cabin, same thing. That wasn't for wood preservation, wasn't for bug or moisture protection. It was just to make them blend into the logs a little bit more, give it that more rustic look that I like. So this cabin here will end up being more similar to the cabin I started and built in 2017 that we lived in for a while, up until 2020. because I have to clean those. They're going to be clean, smooth logs, where this is rough and partially barked, like I said. Well, you can see here, these boards here, I did not torch those. So they have that light lumber look, which I don't really like on a rustic cabin, but most of that will start graying, like that second one from the bottom. It'll start graying like that over time. Or anything that's actually hidden, like inside, that'll just stay at whatever it looks like now. It'll stay like that forever, so that's why I want to darken it. Anyway, this is going to take way longer to debark these now, with the bark starting to dry on there. Some of them, especially the ones in the shade there, are better than the ones over here. These are actually worse than I thought they would be. So I have a bunch of trees to cut down still. I think what I'll do is finish debarking these, throw them up on the pile to dry, and go back into the woods now that the bugs are starting to die down. Not completely, but they're better than they were. I'll get back in the woods, cut the rest of the trees down, and debark them as I drop them so that I don't have this issue. Alright, back at it. It's going to take a while.